guys, I have been on a quest for the last month, obsessively trying to figure out how to paint like this artist, Yutaka Murakami. And let me show you what I mean. So here are some of his beautiful cat paintings. And if you look at the actual edges of the cats, their fur actually creates strands of fur that go up. It's not just blurs of soft paint, which is nice. It actually looks like soft, fluffy, touchable strands of fur, and in some instances it's white fur, and then in other instances it's like black fur. But I have been trying to figure out, obsessively in fact, how to paint like this. So today I am going to talk about some of the answers, and some of them came directly from him. So I was really excited. So let's jump into this, and I'm going to show you a few things that I was working on before and got some answers. So I just want to show you guys some of my experiments that I tried before I figured out this paper, this new paper that I want to tell you guys about. So this is all my experiments that I did with cold press, hot press, another paper, I forget the name of it, I'll show you though, but I was just trying to figure out how to get those amazing lacy, furry edges, and I got it there a little bit, but it was so hard to control. You know, I got a little bit of the effect there, but still not like in a controlled way that I understood how I even did it. It just luckily happened. So here's another attempt. I mean, now these are studies, and I wasn't trying to make them look good. I was trying to focus on getting these soft fur details. That's pretty, but it was so uncontrolled. I couldn't tell where my paint was going to go for the most part, and a lot of it depended on luck. So I was able to get some of those furry edges when I got lucky. Now this is a paper out of, I think, India. It's made out of old cotton t-shirts, and this one was probably the least successful. It's not that great of a paper, but it is an interesting experiment. I'll put the name of it on the screen. I don't remember what it is. I can never remember the name of it. And then this was on hot press. This is probably my favorite outcome. Well, one of my favorites, but this was on hot press, and it got a lot of those furry little edges. And of course you can tell I used a lot of water to get these effects. This one's on Yupo. I think it's a lot of fun, but it's actually, that right there is really cool, but it's totally unpredictable. There's no controlling it. You don't know what you're gonna get. And here's yet another one. This is on cold press. That one's okay. All right, so here we are with a blank piece of paper, this new paper that I discovered from this artist, and I was so appreciative to find out what he used. And I am treating it like I do almost any other painting that I do on cold press paper, which is to first use masking. And actually in this painting I didn't use maskings because I had just gotten this in the mail from Japan, and I wanted to just start painting. I did not want to wait for masking to even dry. I could not wait. So I figured I'll just use gel pen this time for the whiskers and the glints in the eye, whatever. And so I just started painting right away. And I know just from looking at these paintings, I can tell that it's a very wet and wet technique. So I knew I had to get the paper completely wet. So that's what I'm doing here, like I do in all my painting tutorials. I usually work in sections of the painting, and I get the whole section wet, and then I paint it. Let it dry, work on another section, or go get some coffee, or maybe even some Prosecco or something, I don't know. But anyway, so I work in sections, get it wet with clear water, paint it, let it dry, and then I can go back to that section if I need to add more. So that's kind of how I paint in general, no matter what painting surface I'm using, which is almost 95% of the time cold press. I did just do a tutorial on hot press, so be on the lookout for that. If it's not out yet, it's coming. I just did the voiceover for it. And for this painting, I chose to use lamp black. Now, a lot of artists like to poo-poo lamp black, but lamp black is nice in that it's really granulating and it's a pure black. And I didn't want to get crazy with any fancy colors. I wanted this to be fairly simple in the color palette, and I wanted that texture that you can only get from granulating paints like lamp black. Now, other granulating paints include the earth paints like your burnt siennas, your ochres, burnt umber. Those all are fairly granulating earth colors, meaning they're grayer. They gray down whatever other paint you add them to, which can be good because you need that contrast to pop out bright colors. But in this painting, I just wanted some straightforward lamp black with that beautiful granulation because I thought that it would probably work best with this paper and the beautiful things this paper does. Basically, those beautiful edges it creates all on its own almost. It seems like it paints itself with those really fur-like textures on the edges of the paint when you paint wet and wet. Now, remember, wet and wet painting is you put down clear water and then you paint color into that. So that's wet and wet. And you can see how I'm creating these long furs of white fur that come up over his forehead with just a wet and wet technique on this special paper with the lamp black. And it worked out quite beautifully. It did exactly what I wanted it to. I was so excited. I was so afraid that when I would receive this paper, I would discover that I would need yet again to learn some special techniques or something that he does to get these amazing fur textures, but no, it's pretty straightforward. And another thing that seems to work, I need to work with this paper more and learn it even better, but I found that it seems like it really works well where you have white paper and you want the white furs to push into the black hair like on this cat's forehead. You paint it wet and wet, just as usual, let it dry a little bit, and then drop clear water, just like in my push technique. Watch my push technique video if you don't know what I'm talking about. But you drop clear water kind of close, but not in the black paint, and you drop the clear water in the wet paper like I'm doing here. See, I'm doing that here, and then kind of using my brush to even shove the water up into that black paint to create these hair textures, and it seemed to work. I was so excited. The most important part of this painting to me and for what I was trying to accomplish were those long white furs that go up into his forehead. And it did it. I was so excited. As the guy on Mind of Watercolor says, the watercolor really will have a mind of its own on this paper, but it will be a beautiful mind. And there I'm floating in very thick. Right here I wanted it really dark, really thick cream consistency lamp black here. And there it's more milk consistency, but down there on his lower shoulder, I was putting in really thick cream consistency paint. Paint, in other words, that I had mixed just a little bit of water in, just enough to activate it and get it on my brush, basically, and put it on the paper. And you can see how it's kind of bleeding out into the white. And here I go in, I pick up some of that bleeding black into the white fur there. And I'm gonna kind of work with it. Okay, so now I'm putting in more water, trying to push that black back. And then I kind of use my brush to shove the black back with clear water in my brush, of course, so kind of like a push technique. And I'm just I put lines, actual tiny little lines with the tip of my brush, lines of clear water back into that fur coat. And I'm basically just playing with the painting here. This is my first time using this paper, so I'm just experimenting and trying different things to see how far I can push this paper to really get that look of that feathery hair edge that I'm trying to get. Now, by the way, if you are interested in actually learning what this paper is called, it's out of respect for this artist. I don't want to just blab this all over the world. I am going to share it with my Patreon followers. All right, so I'm going in. The eyes I'm using, let's see, I used Winsor Green Gold, and the eye used just a light wash. And this paper seems to absorb color a lot, so I ended up having to do another glaze of color on these eyes a second time, you'll see. But I'm putting in some permanent green light on top of that Winsor Green Gold to just create depth in the eyes. You don't ever want one flat color in your eye. You want some lights, darks, and mediums in your eyes. And I was painting carefully around the white glints, so I was able to save some white glints in the eyes. But this painting, amazingly enough, was not going to be about the eyes. It was about that beautiful fur texture that I wanted. And then I'm going under his chin. I believe I used cobalt. I haven't been using cobalt blue enough in my life. It's just such a pretty color, and I always forget to use it, but it's such a pretty color. So I decided to use that color for the shadows underneath the cat's chin. And I also wanted to see how cobalt worked on this paper, because cobalt is actually a very granulating, beautiful paint. And I'm just putting in a few little shadows in the face to give the cat's face some three-dimensionality, adding some shadows. And you can see now, as that paper is drying, you can see the fur textures coming out down over his shoulder too. And I kept dropping little tiny bits of clear water. You don't want to overdo it, just a little bit of clear water. I continued, as the painting dried, to continue to push that edge and see how far I could push it down. I'm pushing down. That paper is still damp, so I can still work it. So I'm just experimenting to see how much of that fur texture I can get this paper to pull out of its hat by pushing clear water down into that black line along his bottom lower shoulder. As you can see, I put in some cobalt blue in the background. I put some permanent green in the background. I wanted to keep it light and airy and interesting, and you can see the white edge of his chest. I kept that boundary wet, so it was equally wet on the cat and the background. I just painted directly across it with clear water and then went in with my background colors to create a soft furry edge along his left, our right lower shoulder. Look how that's granulating out beautifully down on his lower shoulder. Now you can kind of watch as it dries. The fur texture comes out more and more as it dries all by itself. You don't have to do much of anything. You just watch it get more and more beautiful as it dries. I love that about this paper. I'm so excited about this paper. Putting in little whisker dots there. I almost always put the whisker dots on somewhat damp paper so they hold their shape, but they also stay soft and they don't look too pasted on. Really, this paper is very similar in approach. Unlike the hot press paper that I just did a little tutorial on that you can find on my channel, this paper, you don't really have to change your approach much as far as how you would paint on it, as opposed to Arch's cold press paper. It's very similar. Going in with my scrubber brush. Now this is interesting because this is good paper, but what I found was when you use the scrubber brush like you would on the Arch's cold press paper, on this particular paper, it will not take hardly any scrubbing at all. You can see it actually flaking off the top layer of this paper with the scrubber. So just be warned, if you decide to do any scrubbing on this paper, it has to be the very last step, because you will not be able to go back in and paint on that part of the paper after you scrub it. And then I'm just putting in the really dark little nose holes. I always find that to be important, no matter what you're painting, whether it's a cat, dog, horse, or whatever. There are some points on the animal that you just always want to get completely dark. And sometimes that means 2 layers of glazes in watercolor. That's the pupil and the nose holes. And the eyeliner, of course. Eyeliner, nose holes, and the pupils. Always get those black, 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 dark, dark, dark. if you can, they should be the darkest spot on the painting. All right, now I'm gonna go in with my gel pen and put in the last little pretty details. And then some little Windsor violet there for interest. I don't know what it is about purple, but I always think it's so pretty. So that is my first try at using this new paper that I've discovered, and I am in love. I'm so excited, and it's really refreshed my zest for painting because I'm really excited to paint the next thing. In fact, I've already started another painting of my cat, Sadie. I've started a painting of this little picture on this same paper because she really is the ultimate reason why I wanted to be able to get this effect, because she is a long hair black cat. So there will be more coming of her. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe, and I upload a new video every week. And leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. That will help support my channel. And if you would like to learn from me more in depth and learn some of these new secrets that I've learned, join me over on Patreon. We have a lot of fun over there. So you guys are doing great, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye, guys.